Everyone, so this is session on inheritance. Inheritance is a very important topic when we talk about object-oriented programming. Inheritance is one of the core topics of object-oriented programming. So in this session, we will be learning first what is inheritance, then we'll see the syntax of inheritance, then we'll also see some features of inheritance, and then we'll be looking at what are the different types of inheritance. So to start with, let us first define inheritance. So inheritance is a feature of object-oriented programming in which we create a new class, and that new class becomes the child class of some class that was previously existing, and this parent-child relationship gives access to all the variables and functions of parent class in the child class. Like in point number 2, you can see we create a class C2. Now this class C2 becomes the child class of C1 as soon as we write extend C1. So when we create a class and we add the keyword extends, and then we write the name of a previously existing class, then C1 class here that exists previously becomes the parent class and C2 becomes the child class. So what will happen? All the variables and functions of the C1 class will be available to be used in the C2 class when we call the when we create the object of the C2 class. So why do we do inheritance? So inheritance is done. There are a lot of benefits. We'll note down some of them. Inheritance helps in the reusability of code. What do we mean by reusability of code? Functions which are written once can be used many times whenever required by creating a parent-child relationship. Suppose we have created a function f1 in C1 and we want the same function f1 in another class. So what we will do, we'll establish a parent-child relationship between the two classes. So the new class will also get the function which was written in the previously created class. And software development becomes easier as new version can inherit the features of the previous version. We see that every time a new version of the software is coming, like we had Windows 8, then Windows 10, every times we get a new version of the operating system, a new version of the software. So basically all the major things are same. Little bit changes are added, little features are added in the new version. So we do not have to write the whole version, whole software again. But what we can do, we can create a new child of the previously existed version, and then we can get all those features without writing it again. One important point to be noted here is that private members of a class are not inherited to the child class. We have to note that private members, if a class has a private variable or if a class has a private method or function, it will not be inherited to the child class. You can see here, once again, inheritance is a feature of object-oriented programming. It is not a feature of Java only. It is a feature of object-oriented programming. That means all object-oriented language has these features, be it C++ or Java or .NET, any language. Just C1. This has a function, right? F1. Okay. And this function is of C1. This is F1 of C1. Okay. Now we can have one more function in this. Let this function be F2. Sorry. Now this is F2 of C1. Okay. Now we create a class C2 and we write extends C1. So what happened here? Here we are creating a child class C2 of the class C1. Now you can see here in the main function, I will create an object of class C2, and with the help of this object I'll be able to call the F1 function. I'll be able to also call the F2 function. Now you can see F1 and F2 function. Class C2 has nothing, but its parents has F1 and F2. So we are able to call F1 and F2 function. And if we compile it, you can see that two outputs are coming. You can see we have two outputs here, F1 of C1 and F1 of C2. You can see F1 of C1 and F2 of C2, F2 of C1. If you concentrate here in this program, we have a class C1. We have created a child class C2. This child class C2 as of now has nothing, but its parents has two functions, F1 and F2. So C2 class object can use those functions if it is required. We can also create some function here, void F3, suppose. And here I'll write system.out.println. This is F3 function of C2 class. So C2 class object can call this as well because it belongs to the C2 class only. So if we write obj and if we write dot operator, you can see all these F1, F2 and F3 are available. We can use these F1, F2 and F3. So if we write F3, it is also possible. So when we create a child class, it gets all the variable and function which are present in the parent class, and its own functions will also be available. And when we create the object, we can call all those functions. If we run now, you can see here we are getting F1 of C1, F2 of C1 and F3 of C2. All these three functions are getting invoked. We can use all these three functions, and these three functions, you can see the output that these three functions are there. We can use them. So this is the power of inheritance. We have just now discussed that what happens in inheritance is the child class gets all the variables and functions of the parent class. And how do we create the child class? We create the child class by the keyword extends C1. We write extend C1 and C1 becomes parent. Here what happens? Here C1 becomes parent of the class C2. So C2 automatically becomes child, and child gets all those features of its parent. Now, suppose I make it private. I declare F1 as private. Then what will happen? This private function of F1 will not be available. As soon as you see I declare it private, then here there is an error. What is the error? The method F1 from the type C1 is not visible. It is not visible here. It is not accessible here. I remove the word private, and you can see that error has gone. I make this function. You can see as soon as I make a function as private, I'm declaring this as private, and you see the error starts coming here. The method F2 from the type C1 is not visible. So when we make some function or some variable as private to a class, it is not inherited to the child class. The child class cannot see it, whether it is available or not. So if our class wants a function or a variable to be used only by itself and not by its child, then those functions can be declared to be as a private function, and that function cannot be used here. If we compile, it will give error. It is already giving error, it is showing, but if you can check it here, this will not run. Build field, do you want to continue? If I continue, then it will say that the method F2 from the type C1 is not visible. You can see the method F2 from the child C1 is not visible. So this is what is inheritance. Inheritance is a feature of object-oriented programming in which a new class can get the variables and functions of the existing class by establishing a parent-child relationship. The child class is declared with the keyword extends followed by the parent class. For example, this is how we have discussed, and these are the important advantages of inheritance. And one important point to be noted is that private members of class are not inherited to the child class. So first part of inheritance is this what we have just now discussed. What is inheritance? How do we create a parent and a child class? And what is the advantage of inheritance? And what is not inherited to the child class? These 4 points. Now, in interviews, as soon as you mention in your resume that you know Java, then there will be questions from inheritance, and these are the questions that are the very basic question. What is inheritance? So the answer is point number one. How do we create inheritance? The answer is point number two. We use extends keyword. What are the features of inheritance? What are the advantages of inheritance? You have point number three. And then point number four, is private member inheritable? We will say no, private member is not inheritable. And then we can come to the syntax. Here is the running version of inheritance. We have a class C1, we have a functions F1 and F2. F2 is private, so private function cannot be used. You can see there is an error. We have to remove this. And then when we create the object of the child class, we can call all the functions from the parent class and from itself, except for those which are declared to be as a private function of the parent class. So I'll keep it simple. I'll keep it till here only. In the coming session, we'll discuss more on what is inheritance and how do we use them.